Do you really need your p-value to be less than 0.05? Not necessarily. In this video, I will present you with some information and citable material for your next paper that might help you to improve your results and make more convincing statements. Hi everyone, Albert here. Welcome to my video. You're watching this video probably because you are a graduate student or doing some research, either physical or digital, and you are getting p-values that are not as you wanted, such as your p-value is not less than 0.05. This can be quite frustrating, which means that you might need to start over your entire experiment, find alternative solutions, or even worse, you feel like you wasted your time. Hold on for a moment. First of all, if your p-value is greater than 0.05, it's not the end of the world. This is what the video is for. I can help you fix it, sort of. At the end, you might be able to convince the reviewer by using 0.01 as a threshold. Who knows? So you watched until this point, you are doing data analysis, you care about p-values. Please pause for a few seconds and ask yourself, what is p-value? What does p mean here? P means probability. It often comes together with a null hypothesis. Every time when I'm teaching this concept, I like to say, think of null as none or nothing. Null hypothesis is a statement claiming that the effect or relationship being studied does not exist. In other words, there is no effect or relationship. Back to the p-value here, that is always paired with a null hypothesis. It is probability between 0 to 1 or 0% to 100% saying how likely your null hypothesis is true. So when you reject a null hypothesis, you will be able to claim that the opposite is true. That means there is a relationship or effect. Using medical trial as an example, the null hypothesis would be there is no effect of the drug. After some experiment, you got a p-value of 0.05, then you may say that the probability of the drug having no effect is 5%. On the other side, you would say there is a 95% probability that the drug has some effect that you are studying. So if your p-value is 0.01, that is 1% chance that there is no relationship or no effect, or say 99% probability that there is relationship or effect. Here you can see that your p-value can be any number between 0 to 1, as 0 being absolutely certain that your null hypothesis is false, and 1 being 100% absolute certain that your null hypothesis is true. Again, the goal here is to prove your null hypothesis is false because you want to prove that there is a relationship. Therefore, you want your p-value to be as small as possible. In a more statistical way, saying this is a low p-value such as 0.01 is taken as evidence that the null hypothesis can be rejected. And statisticians say that a p-value of 0.01 is highly significant, or say that the data is significant at the 1% level. Normally, a researcher would have set the threshold before the experiment was conducted, such as 0.01 or 0.05. Then they can conclude whether the relationship exists by rejecting the null hypothesis based on the p-value they have at the end. I have two questions here, and you may have encountered them or are about to. 1. Does p equals to 0.05 really have much difference than 0.051? What about 0.0501? What about 0.06? Number 2, how can I be certain that the alternative is true if the null hypothesis is false? I'm going to give you the answer right now. Explanations will come after. Then I will direct you to some scientific publications to cite when you need to. Like I did in my two most recent published papers, I used 0.1 as the threshold. Number 1, 0.05 versus 0.51. They are numerically different, but that has minimal to do with proving discovery or scientific importance. And number 2, when you reject the null hypothesis, this does not automatically prove its direct opposite. The key word to argue the validity of choosing 0.05 as the statistical significance threshold is arbitrary. It is simply being chosen arbitrarily, although almost everyone is using it. Think about this. When someone gambles, will they insist on a 95% chance of winning or even higher? A new medical trial may save someone very important, but the chance of success is only 90%. Would you insist on waiting for a 95% chance of success? Or during a health crisis, should the officials wait for a perfect probability before recommending interventions? I think the answer to those scenarios are obvious. Different fields have different tolerances for uncertainty, and therefore, applying a universal 0.05 standard does not always make practical sense and may not be necessarily able to reflect the true importance of the result. The conclusion should not be drawn purely based on the statistical significance threshold, but instead, the emphasis should be on the importance of the practical evidence. In your own field, ask yourself this question. Is the 99% or 95% threshold necessary for you? If you can prove something to be true with a 90% confidence, is this enough? You should keep in mind that statistical significance is not necessarily equivalent to practical importance in the real world, especially for exploratory research. Do not restrain yourself with a 0.01 or 0.05. There are precedent works done using p-values from 0.01 up to 0.2. Now, arguing for the second part, the keyword is completeness. Most or nearly all hypotheses are not binary, true or false. There could be other factors not considered, or we just have an incomplete understanding of the underlying system. The first example is medical trials. The null hypothesis made most often is the drug or procedure has no effect. You got your results with a p-values less than 0.05, then you made the conclusion saying the drug or procedure has an effect. And this will be true if and only if these two statements are completely complementary. But unfortunately, they are not in most realities. People often forget or overlook the complexity of the problem, and they are not binary, true or false, black or white. There's something in between. For the medical trial, other factors such as sex or age may affect the recovery rate. So the null hypothesis is not simply the drug has no effect. It should be, for example, the drug has no effect on males less than 50 years old. What is the alternative hypothesis to this one then? You will have more than just one. The null hypothesis you made and their alternatives may not completely capturing the entire situation. This is just one reason. And another reason is that the p-value tells us about the probability of observing the data if the null hypothesis is true. And this may be very different from the probability of the hypothesis given the data. This is known as the fallacy of transposed conditional. For example, the fifth report of the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Summary asserted that there is a 95% certainty that at least half of the warming in the last 60 years is man-made. In fact, what the report actually showed was that the null hypothesis, less than half the warming in the last 60 years is man-made, could be rejected at the 5% level, or p-value with 0.05. Are you confused? Let me put it differently in steps. Step 1. The report made the null hypothesis. Less than 50% warming is caused by human. And step 2, the report rejected the null hypothesis with a p-value less than 0.05. And then third, the report made the conclusion more than 50% warming is caused by human. So the problem here arises from step 2. When rejecting the null hypothesis, the reason was that less than 5% probability of observing the actual data given the null hypothesis. The report only showed the original assumption is unlikely, being less than 5%. What the report did not do is prove the alternative, more than half warming is caused by human. But they did, wrongly, with the claim in step number 3. So there is a critical distinction between probability of observing the data given the null hypothesis versus probability of the hypothesis given the data. People often make conclusions about B, that's a step 3 in the previous example, but they actually only have A, step number 1 and number 2 in the previous example. I know this fallacy of transposed conditional is very confusing because this is very counterintuitive and you may feel this is against what you learned. And what is the difference really between A and B? Let's say I have a coin and I want to know if this is a fair coin. So I made the null hypothesis, the coin is fair. And then I will do the experiment. I'm going to flip the coin 10 times and observed 9 heads and 1 tail. So based on the binomial distribution, I can calculate the p-value of observing such an outcome is less than 0.01. So finally, I will make the conclusion. I will reject the null hypothesis. I will say the coin is unfair, and I will say the probability of the coin being fair is less than 1%, or I'm going to say I'm 99% confident that the coin is unfair. Wait, if you understood what I explained in the last 10 minutes, you should realize this conclusion is wrong. This is exactly what most people think they have, the probability of the hypothesis given the data. In the experiment, what I actually have is the probability of observing the data, 9 heads and 1 tail in 10 tosses, and it's less than 1%, assuming the coin is fair. That is my null hypothesis. At the end, I did not prove my coin is unfair. I only proved that it is unlikely to be a fair coin. You see the difference here? I will need more rigorous statistical tests to prove it, such as Bayesian inference. I would like to conclude with a quote from the Cult of Statistical Significance by Zeliak and Mikulski. Statistical significance should be a tiny part of an inquiry concerned with the size and importance of relationships. If you have watched until this far, thank you, and congratulations, you might just be able to defend your results in a better way. And if you have been struggling with getting your p-values to be less than 0.05, maybe try to relax a little bit, try 0.1. I'm going to provide you with the reference to my 2 recent papers that used 0.1 as a threshold down below, and as well as some other great reference you may want to cite, which you also helped me in preparing this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.